Hi everybody! It's been a long while since now I posted a video, and hopefully now when the winter sets in it will be more time to make videos, and I have started filming all these projects, but since I hadn't got around to making the video or making the final shots for this video, I have completed some projects that I had a time pressure on. I have completed without making any movies. But this time it's a bit different. It's a longer project that will take some time and do have some interest for you. And this is the rejuvenation of Commodore 1702 monitor. And this is kind of a special beast because the 702 monitor was made by two different manufacturers, or at least there was two different chassis, and that's just for the American version with the NTSC and 110 volt. But what I have here is a 240 volt version, and that is not very well documented. Perhaps much is the same, but as we dig into this, we see a lot of differences in both the main board, the chassis, and also the intake is a bit different. Of course, they could have made it very simple just to alter the transformer on the input, because it does have a transformer. It's not as the cheapest American implementations where you do have just 110 volt driven straight off the mains. But here the B plus voltage is about 110 volt, but it's driven through a regulator circuit, and it's driven through a transformer and an input filter. And the fault with this monitor is that it blows the fuse, and it blows the fuse on the intake, so the fault is somewhere. I think it can be because of difference in fuse sizes and such. As we saw on my MPS 801 printer circuit, these fuses are not very well designed to protect what they are meant to protect. So the initial diagnosis is that there is something fault with the circuit from the 230 volt input and to the end of the power regulator circuit, and that is mainly based three different boards and modules in. That's what I'm going to look into, but this first episode will mainly be about the circuit itself and what we, the procedure for finding out what's fault with this monitor. So the first thing we do is to start to go through our documentation and compare that to some of the things that's inside the monitor. So let's just crack on with that. Earlier on this channel I have shown you packages that has arrived in the mail, and the contents was just rattling about inside, and everything has been cracked and damaged, and all plastic is real brittle and don't handle much stress and pressure. And this monitor is even more precautious because there is heavy stuff inside, so if you give this some speed and stop it abruptly, there will be a lot of momentum inside the neck of the picture tube and so on. But this guy here has packed to the extreme. This is very, very good packaging. Everything is nice and tight, and I'm going to use, of course, the same box when I ship this back. And he has even bothered to mark the different parts of the packaging, so I should know what goes where when I send this back. This is really a good example for everyone to follow up on. You can even see in the bottom of the box he has made drawings and marks and schematics for where everything should be placed. So it's impossible to make anything wrong when you pack this back. This is really amazing, or maybe I should say patronizing, as if I don't know how to pack a monitor, but every bit helps to keep these old things alive. Yeah, this is the service manual for the 1701 and 1702 monitors, and this is the American versions. And let's hope I don't forget anything. This is actually the second time I do this, as the voice was very disturbed last time. I do think there is some clipping filter that was applied in the Open Broadcaster Studio that made this happen. As we can see here, this was released in April 1985 and is stated as a preliminary service manual, as most of Commodore's manuals are. Most of them, at least, are preliminary, so they didn't finish much of their service manual. Of course, there also was service bulletins that was released after the product was shipped to help a service technician, but that should not state that the service manual itself is preliminary, especially when you make, and this is, there is one other version of this, but it doesn't change much. And I have not been able to spot any difference between them. Yeah, and this is just the contents, and we can see here this is the 120 volt version, and it's NTSC, and this was released in the time that we have the Commodore 64, the VIC-20, the Plus 4 and the C16. So that means before the C128 was launched later in 1985. And you have the safety precautions, and this is very important to be able to grasp, because the high voltage inside a monitor could kill you, especially in a color monitor where the voltage on the picture tube itself is much higher. It can actually be between 12,000 volts on a black and white monitor or monochrome, and up to 26,000 volts something on a color monitor. And what we are most concerned about is the high voltage on the picture tube, but you also have the B plus voltage that on this monitor is pretty high. And here you can see some measurement methods for checking that you are operating without limits for the AC safety. And now it comes to a part of the monitor that it's actually a very good read-through if you do some repairs or are interested in picture tubes and CRTs. This can actually be a good reading to get some more insight in how the magnetic fields are manipulated through the coils and magnets on the neck of the picture tube. And you also have the focus, and that every color should line up as it should on the grid in front of the tube. So this is good reading, even though it's not the fault of our monitor. And here you can see that there are some half-finished work here. 72 locations in. I wonder if this was the nationalized version for PAL and so on. I don't know. And they say that this is 110 volt, the B plus voltage, or B1 as they call it here, on the 1701. The 1702, they state that this is 128 volt. But on the chassis that I'm working on now, it's several places stated on the PCB that it's 110 volt. So I'm not sure what this is all about. Yeah, and this is just the ordinary controls that you have for horizontal and vertical position. Color signals, and of course this is NTSC, so not much of value for us. Here we come to something that starts to interest us. And here you have what we are interested in. This is the AC voltage in to the system, and we have the line filter and fuse, and we have the power switch, power transformer, and we have the voltage regulator, and we have the B1 voltage. I do think that there are other voltages also generated on this voltage control, but at least the chassis voltage, the B voltage, is made here. So this is mainly the part that interests us, but of course this is just the block diagram. And here we move into some circuit, and this is the video circuit, and here it's stated that even though this is a description of the 1701 monitor. Most of it is accurate for the 1702. So the 1702 actually has some information drawback here, as mostly it's stated for 1701 and the 1702 is mostly similar, and that's something you don't want to hear when you are doing, you're getting really in depth on a schematic and you hear that it's mostly correct. It's very hard concept to grasp. The audio circuit's probably the same. I will have to check with this main PCB as is. And control, horizontal, vertical oscillator, of course it's slightly different. Horizontal output, and here you have some of the voltages. This is 140 volt peak to peak, very high voltage. This could also be something that is keeping the power supply from working, because there is some current running through here too. And this is the power circuit, and this is nothing similar to what we have, I think. This is somewhat similar because we have the AC input, we have a line filter, and we have a fuse. So this is mostly correct, and we have a power transformer. But we don't have this kind of regulator. We have an integrated IC that is regulating our power supply, so this is not the same. Troubleshooting guide, no sound, B1 is normal. We can say that B1 is not normal as the fuse is blowing. The regulator PCB assembly used in 72 models differs from the 1701 power PCB assembly. The PN voltage should be checked beginning with EC901. Okay, so here they actually have, does 4 amp fuse blow? Yes, it's the rectifier that's fault, and on our circuit it probably is not. This is nothing of use for us, I think. No, they do state some information like this for the 1702 here, but nothing for the power. Improper horizontal and vertical synchronization. Here they say that they are the same. This is for the 1701 chassis part, and you can see this is, as I said, this is a GVC monitor, but there actually are a Toshiba picture tube in our chassis. And this is nothing like our board layout, schematic notes. The main schematics, our part should be down here, and as we said, it's not the same. Okay, here we comes to the 1702, more of use for us. And here they stated that B1 is 125 volt, and it could raise to 158 if it's open circuit. This is if it is too high. If the one blows the 1 amp fuse, it may short on the horizontal output transistor. That was I was mentioning earlier. And there are also some diode that could cause the 1 amp fuse to blow. And they do have some valuable input for us. Check for the shorted diodes, check for shorted transistor and diodes. They ask us to, if the 1 amp fuse is not blowing, they ask us to put in a 100 watt 125 volt light bulb. This will absorb most of the current on the, this we can do. I don't have a 100 watt 125 volt light bulb, as all the things now are LEDs, but I will find some resistor or something that I can use instead. Yes. This is something we have to check if we get the power supply working, so we're not going into depth into this. And here you can see the Toshiba, if it's designated T. Yes, and that's right, our serial number has a T, and it's a Toshiba picture tube, so that is okay. And here we have some chassis part. And this is just big parts and stuff. It's not that we can buy this as a Commodore part number anyway, so we just have to look into the values and see what these really are. And they also state that some of the components are safety components and that you should replace them with exact replacement only. And they list the fuse and the coils and the stuff like that. The same some of the capacitors. And this IC, of course. This is the power regulator, bridge rectifier. This silicone is probably some normal diodes. This is another rectifier probably. I do have to look into that. Oh, and here we comes to what... yeah, I know, I understand. This is actually the PCB before it's breaking up into smaller parts. You can see these breakage lines here. And so this is actually some puzzle. But it will be something like this. This is the main PCB. This is the PCB for the neck of the picture tube. This will be the filter, I think, for the AC mains. No, it says AV input. Where are the filter PCB then? This has a lot of potentiometers, so this has to be some control circuit. Yeah, this might be it then, the filter circuit. This... No, but this does not look like our board. Our board has a big cooler here and the fuse is placed another way. Ah, okay, here we come. 1702T board layout. And this looks more like our power supply board. And this is about the same as the other one. But this looks like where our fuse are placed. And this is probably the same. And this is probably also about the same. And this looks familiar. Yes, okay, so this is how our power supply is did. And this is a huge as aluminium heatsink. And our fuse is approximately here. I don't remember anything standing like so. And we only have one fuse on this PCB, I think. So it's not exactly the same. But as I said, this is the 220 volt version we are dealing with here. And this is an American version, so it's probably not exactly the same. Yeah, and here they have broken this up like so. You have the AC mains, it goes into a rectifier, so it's not passing through the power transformer, it goes straight to this regulator. And here I do think we have some difference between the versions, because I do think that they have put a transformer and yeah, lowered this voltage, because here it goes straight from the 110 volt and it goes into the circuit here and rectified and goes to the power regulator circuit here. And you have a power transformer and it comes here with its own rectifier and it goes and makes some other voltage that is not regulated here. You can see the rectifier. And you have the capacitor here for straightening out the signals. But over here you do have a transistor that stands in series with some voltage. So this is a current limiter or voltage regulator on this circuit. And here you have the B plus voltage. So even though this is similar, it won't be the same. I do think that in our circuit this transformer gives out maybe the 110 volt here and takes 240 in. So we have a transformer here that stands somewhere here or after some filtering and stuff. Yeah, so it was not totally the same anyway. Yeah, and here you have some descriptions of the picture tube, metal film, this main PCB assembly, RGB assembly. This is this different? Okay, this is the schematic without the T. Yeah, but it looks exactly the same. Yeah, for all our purposes, this looks exactly the same. Yeah, and that was the end of the service manual. It's not the best of news for us that is not covering the 220 volt version, but now we at least know what we have to deal with. We should look for a 125 volt B+. We should also look for this lower voltage signal here, and we should look for a transformer in front of this somewhere. So we do have something to look out for. And we can say we do know what it should not look like. That's not a good way of going into a business where you should do some fault finding, but at least it should be possible to reverse engineer this and see what we can do. It's only 2 voltages. It's the B plus or B1 voltage and this one down here. So if we take the power supply and dismantle it from the rest, if it does not give out this, the fault is in the power supply. If it does give it something that looks like this, then the fault finding will have to start in this end. This is a 220 volt model of the 1702. It has the serial number XC. I wonder if this is a 70200018F, and it's made in Japan. But I have to take this up and see what's inside. And see, there is some small damage here on the chassis, but this might appear to be glued. Maybe it was like that before, I'm not sure. And if you take a look in the front, this looks really good. It does have a lid. Oh, and you can see that this has been, in the home of a smoker probably. It's a lot of yellow in some spots and some, maybe this, some residue left. But someone has done a very thorough job of cleaning this. The power knob appears to be okay. Yeah, it appears to be okay here. And you can see here they have marked the screws in front here for with an arrow. That probably means that this is some way of undoing this, but I seem to remember that you have to take the back off first and the rest will slide off. There are some years since I last serviced a monitor of this kind. Here you can see my yellow screwdriver makes a perfect fit on these Japanese screws. And this is a rusty old one. I did a count and I have about 50 yellow screwdrivers all in all. I've actually bought some years ago on an, I think it was an auction on the internet. And I've paid just a couple of bucks for a lot of these. This is for the plate here, I think. I don't know. But it's marked with the arrow. But this might be left intact. I'm not sure. It's lots and lots of screws. And this is quite in the early days of computing when things cost a lot. And it was no trouble to use a lot of screws because the work, the labor involved was not a major cost anyway. And that, I think, is the last of the screws. Yes, it did slide right off. If we take a look inside the case here, you can see that it has been cleaned, but not very much on the inside. There still are some of these yellow smoker's dew in here. And what do we have here? It's a Toshiba picture tube. It's stated here somewhere black stripe on this this picture tube. And the power supply is here in the back. And I'm going to turn this on and check, but I do seem to remember that this was dead, and this has a regular power supply, no switch mode, and so such funny things was not in the makings yet. And it do have some integrated circuits, and it do have some discrete logic, and of course it might have some bad caps. Yeah, we have to just try to turn it on to see what happens. This is the speaker was not connected, and the speaker leads was just flopping around inside. That's not a good thing. I will just try to keep them away from everything to get some high voltage or even induced voltage into to the speaker and amplifier circuits is not a good idea. It did turn on. I did hear some sound, maybe some degaussing sound. The power LED does not light up. Yeah, and of course on this monitor the degaussing circuit is connected to the power switch and to the power, so that did work. There is no high voltage present. So power supply issue at least, and we dig into the power supply first then and see what we can find. Take this out of the way. This is just the audio, video, luma chroma and front and rear input selector circuit, and probably we do have some part of the power supply. It's actually more than one circuit here. It's very difficult to dismount everything in this monitor because everything is mounted on this metal frame, and I do suppose it was like you had to unscrew everything from the back, but it also was so that it would slide out from the front, and I wonder if that is the screws that was in the front that now keeps this from sliding backwards. So maybe I should try the two screws under the cover and check. They are marked with arrows, so black plastic screws, and you can see this has taken with it some of the plastic, and this is what happens when you unscrew and screw a plastic screw without making sure that it follows the old tabs. And this was not really fastened. I do wonder how long this has been since this was out. And you can also see some corrosion on this screw. It's a bit rusty on the side. I check the underside to see if there is more screws. There actually are some holes for screws, but no screws inside. It could be that the same chassis has been used for other suppliers and monitors, and that's why it's this could have been used for other suppliers and chassis that's almost the same, and that's why they left these screws unturned. It did in some fashion let loose air, but I do wonder what keeping this now. I can see some slide out brackets. And the whole of this metal chassis should slide out, but there is something in the middle keeping it. Did I forget the screw? Yes, of course I did. There was one screw in the middle. It was just hidden in plain sight. And this too, you can see the plastic is getting out with the screw. Not so unserviceable at all. And we just stretch out the high power connection there to the screen. I won't disconnect more than I really have to. And I do think it's the degaussing circuit and this up here that keeps this stuck in here now. Maybe the earth wire. This wire here keeps, it's the earth wire for the CRT. And it will eventually grab hold of something again, but this will probably be enough. This fuse was supplied, so probably this is blowing fuses. Maybe that's what it does. So there was a fuse, I remember, in this bag here. And this is is probably the blown fuse. I do have new fuses, so we can just try to replace the fuse, but I'm going to take a look first to see what I can find inside of here. There is one more fuse down here. And so what do we have here? This is the power input board, and you have a fuse, you have some capacitors, you do have some form of transformer or maybe a noise suppressing Drossel. I will just move this so that you can see. This is the board that we now see, and this is the power input. This goes to the power switch, I suppose. Yeah, this is the power switch. Everything here goes through the fuse, and this is a 2 amp fuse. I can just check this fuse, of course. Yeah, it stands on ohm, not beeping. And this fuse is okay. There has to be some loopback back to the power switch that goes to this board here, and this board here is the power supply. Yeah, I'm going to unscrew that board too. It has 4 screws fitted into this metal frame, and I just marvel at how good this screwdriver actually are for removing these screws. It's a perfect fit, and with normal modern screwdrivers you do tend to find something, but most of modern screwdrivers are so mixed between Pulsi drive and Phillips and don't fit anything quite 100%. And this is made to slide out of here, and some plastic feet thingies. You know, it gets kind of weird because this yellow wire here is very short. I'm not sure where it goes, but this was a very strange cable management. And this is the board that has the fuse that is blowing, and it also has the degauss circuit. It's the black wires, and the power input here is these wires, and it had the red one towards the chassis, and this degaussing doesn't matter much. And here you have a transformer, and of course we can measure the output of this transformer to see if it's good. But the first thing I will do is take a look into this circuit here, and it does have 2 electrolytic caps, and this has a lot of bad solder joints. Bad solder joints does not explain fuses breaking, but I will have to look into that. You can see this this IC here. It's a very strange thing. It has a cut-off leg, and it does have a hole for it, but no connection to that hole. So this is how it should be. This has never been connected. And you do have a small optocoupler. No, this is not an optocoupler. It's actually a small rectifier. And you have some diodes and the larger rectifier. Yeah, I will have to measure out all the components inside here, and it's nice to have them marked on this side of the board. I'm really sorry here, but I don't have any good way of showing you the screen, because I can't find a contrast that works while I still see what I'm doing. And here I just measure out all the components on this board. I couldn't measure out the power regulator, of course, but I measure out every other component that I can measure out, and everything checks out okay. But the IC901 I can't figure out. So I have to go into the datasheet, and I do have to make some measurements with the power on, but that will have to be the work for another session. Yes, what have we learned so far? And this is not the exact same schematics. At least there is some, yeah, it's not totally the same, but at least it uses the same regulator. that we have here. It uses the same circuit here, it seems. This is the extra power transformer that is on the board, the small one, and this is the small rectifier that was on our board. And this is the bigger rectifier. This is the large capacitors, and we also have one electrolytic capacitor here that is a bit smaller because it has a lower voltage. You can see this is 160 volt, 180 volt mark, and this one down here is only 35 volt. And this line filter that you actually see here, this is on the small board. Here you have the AC line in, and you have the first fuse, and you do have the noise suppression filter that you have here on the intake. And you also can see here you have the degaussing coil that is coupled into the circuit like so, and coupled to the power switch. What we do have here, I'm not so sure yet, but there is a large power resistor, and this is mounted on a plate behind the transformer. There is a large 20 watt resistor, and this is the small fuse, and our fuse is of course 2 amps for this one, and 1.2 something for this, because this is made for the 120 volt circuit. And there also are some diodes I can't find in this circuit. I do have 2 more diodes, and they don't show up on these schematics. But at least this is the closest we get, and I also have the data sheet for this regulator, so I will be able to go into some detail. But what we can measure from here is the B1 voltage that we should be able to measure, and if this voltage is within 110 to 130 volt, that's okay. We saw in the documentation earlier that this can raise to about 160 volt if this is open circuits or there is no load on this. And you also have the circuit down here that gives out, a voltage. I'm not totally sure what it is, but at least we know that it's lower than 35 volt. Probably something along the line of under 20 volt or something. At least we do know that this is no high voltage draw, because this power transformer here is very small. And this is of course some of the craziness we see on Commodore equipment, because this small transformer here and this small rectifier and this small load here is fused to this 4 amp fuse. So that make really no sense to me why this is connected to this big fuse. This should have got its power from a smaller fuse than this. And maybe there are some other fuses, but I haven't not been able to identify them yet. So we still have some work to do here. I forgot to mention, in front of this, between this circuit here and the noise suppression filter here, I will actually start with a clean sheet. What I forgot to say was that behind this here, after this filter and stuff, you do have a second transformer that will have 220 volt input, and it probably has 110 something volt output, and this is stated between here. So this means that the circuit that's coming from here can actually be more similar to this, but we know it's not totally similar, but at least it can be, because this huge transformer that stands in between here. So that's everything we have been able to figure out so far. So we will take up this again in the next episode. When that will be, I'm not totally sure. I have been swamped in work this autumn, so it probably will be in a couple of weeks. So, thanks for watching. Hope to see you in my next video. Please hit like and subscribe, as it really will help out the channel. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching.